Actually, let's set the scene before we start with our first session this morning. I'd like to call on Xavier Guillou. You know Xavier, for a bit of a scene setter. Obviously from the European Commission, DG Mare, team leader, marine, renewable energies and maritime spatial planning. A bit of context, Xavier, a scene setter ahead of our first discussion. Welcome, Xavier.
Merci Seamus. Je vais m'exprimer en français. Bonjour à tous. Au nom de la Direction générale des affaires maritimes et de la pêche de la Commission européenne, on est très heureux de vous accueillir ce matin pour la deuxième journée de nos travaux. Vous qui êtes dans la salle ici à Brest et ceux qui nous rejoignent en ligne. Alors aujourd'hui, nous allons regarder vers l'avenir. Et l'avenir, on sait, dans un changement de variable important qui nous affecte. On l'a vu déjà dans les premières réactions sur Slido ce matin. En ce qui nous concerne, côté Commission européenne, un des éléments cadres pour nos réflexions, c'est la stratégie européenne sur une économie bleue durable que nous avons sortie l'année dernière et qui se concentre sur les différents éléments de l'économie et de l'environnement maritime, savoir la décarbonation, les éléments de biodiversité au sens large, les systèmes alimentaires issus du milieu marin et une approche circulaire des processus productifs et de l'économie. Donc c'est autour de ces grands thèmes que nous travaillons et qui ensuite se déclinent sur les aspects de planification spatiale. Alors, un rappel rapide mais important, notamment pour nous qui travaillons à la fois sur les affaires maritimes et sur la pêche, principalement sur la pêche d'ailleurs dans l'ensemble de nos services, la durabilité des systèmes alimentaires avec les enjeux d'une pêche durable et du bon fonctionnement de la politique commune de la pêche, avec d'ailleurs un rapport sur ces questions qui sera adopté par la Commission à la fin de cette année. Un élément important également, c'est la mise en œuvre de nos lignes directrices pour une aquaculture durable, qui sont en pleine phase d'évolution, avec un élément central pour nous, c'est une réflexion d'ensemble sur les thématiques autour des algues et les biotechnologies marines. Bon, c'est très apparent dans nos débats d'hier et aussi dans nos premiers échanges de ce matin, la décarbonation. Alors à la fois, on le voit maintenant, le besoin pour répondre aux enjeux climatiques de fournir une énergie propre et durable, mais un enjeu supplémentaire qui s'ajoute maintenant d'avoir une sécurité de nos approvisionnements énergétiques. Et je pense que l'actualité quotidienne depuis 2 mois avec l'agression militaire russe en Ukraine nous le rappelle, les enjeux d'énergie propre et d'énergie dans nos eaux, dans nos territoires est particulièrement crucial. Alors à la fois production d'énergie, mais également basculement des systèmes de propulsion, par exemple, pour l'ensemble des navires autour de nos côtes. L'énergie marine renouvelable, nous l'avons évoqué hier, nous allons en parler aujourd'hui à nouveau. Important de voir, et vous êtes au courant, bien entendu, mais l'accélération très forte du basculement que nous souhaitons observer dans l'ensemble de nos systèmes de production énergétique. Pour rappel, il y a à peine plus d'1 an, les objectifs européens étaient à 27% de production, 27% d'énergie renouvelable dans l'ensemble de la consommation énergétique en Europe. Qui rapidement, après discussion au Parlement européen, est monté à 32%, sachant qu'on est à peu près à 20% aujourd'hui. Donc il y a eu un accord autour de 32% d'énergie renouvelable dans nos systèmes de consommation énergétique. Puis le paquet qu'on a appelé Fit for 55, donc qui visait à accélérer la réduction des gaz à effet de serre, a fixé cet objectif à 40%. C'était en juin, juste il y a 1 an, en juin de l'année dernière. Et puis avec les éléments liés à la sécurité énergétique, le nouvel objectif européen est à 45% dans le cadre du paquet que nous appelons Repower EU, donc qui a été adopté en mars 2022. Donc nous voyons, alors ce n'est pas uniquement l'énergie en mer, mais nous voyons qu'une accélération extrêmement forte et un basculement un basculement qui devrait s'observer et opérer vraiment dans les quelques années à venir. Ce qui veut dire pour les systèmes, en tout cas électriques, autour de plus de 70% de l'électricité produite et consommée en Europe viendra de sources renouvelables. Donc un basculement complet et en tout cas prioritaire et radical du système énergétique. Jusqu'à présent, les énergies renouvelables sont principalement concentrées en mer du Nord avec les technologies d'éolien posé. Mais on voit bien sur l'ensemble des bassins maritimes européens une accélération des projets, des engagements sur l'ensemble des pays côtiers européens. C'est très clair en Baltique. On en a parlé hier avec présentation par notre collègue suédois. C'est très clair aussi dans l'Atlantique avec des engagements forts en Irlande, en France, en Espagne, très récemment également au Portugal et un intérêt croissant sur la Méditerranée et la mer Noire. Les éléments de coopération régionale sont évidents dans ces sujets, à la fois au niveau des infrastructures communes, mais aussi au niveau des enjeux communs liés aux interactions avec les usages et usagers de la mer et les interactions avec le milieu marin. Donc ce matin, nous allons discuter coexistence, multi-usage, éventuellement multi-technologie, avec la possibilité d'avoir sur un même espace plusieurs sources de production d'énergie. Alors, d'un point de vue d'ensemble, au niveau de la Commission européenne, nous nous intéressons à l'ensemble des énergies renouvelables en mer, celles qui sont déjà matures, l'éolien posé, mais également le flottant, qui est particulièrement adapté à des fonds plus profonds, ici dans l'Atlantique ou en Méditerranée, mais aussi les technologies de courant et de vagues, houlomotrices et hydrolien. Parce que c'est clair que par rapport à nos enjeux, il y a de la place pour l'ensemble des solutions et un mix énergétique important. Alors vous avez sans doute vu ça le 18 mai dernier à Esbjerg au Danemark. L'ensemble des chefs de gouvernement de 4 États membres, Danemark, Belgique, Allemagne et Pays-Bas, sont retrouvés également avec la présidente de la Commission européenne pour annoncer une déclaration d'Esbjerg. Le 18 mai, ça tombait le jour où la Commission présentait son paquet de mise en œuvre des objectifs de REPowerEU. Donc c'est avec un élément politique très important autour de l'éolien en mer, avec l'objectif que la mer du Nord soit la Green Power Plant of Europe, et avec une accélération très importante des objectifs. Donc on voit bien qu'il y a une montée très claire au niveau du soutien et de l'engagement politique au plus haut niveau sur les objectifs d'énergie en mer. En termes autre élément central et crucial, les enjeux de restauration et de conservation de l'environnement marin. Ça a été dit dans nos discussions hier par nos collègues de la Direction générale de l'environnement. Les objectifs de bon état environnemental des eaux européennes n'ont pas été pleinement atteints en 2020. Il y a eu des progrès dans certains descripteurs, une détérioration dans d'autres. Donc ces objectifs doivent être atteints, mais d'autres objectifs se rajoutent en lien avec la crise climatique et les objectifs liés à la stratégie biodiversité de l'Union européenne. On l'a déjà évoqué, 30% d'aires marines protégées, 10% de protection stricte, avec des travaux en cours sur qu'est-ce qu'une protection stricte, est-ce que c'est un usage exclusif, un usage modéré, comment intégrer ça dans notre espace maritime. Dans quelques semaines, la Commission présentera aussi une proposition sur Nature Restoration Law qui devrait également fixer des obligations en termes d'objectifs de restauration des différents habitats à la fois marins et terrestres. Donc ça sera aussi un élément à intégrer dans nos cartes et dans nos éléments de planification de l'espace maritime. Voilà, je pense que c'est les principaux enjeux pour cette deuxième journée ensemble. Je pense que nous avons certain nombre d'intérêts communs, de questions communes, peut-être de débuts de réponses à élaborer ensemble. Merci, je vous souhaite de bons travaux.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Xavier. Lots of food for thought as we launch into our third discussion. And I imagine a lot of what Xavier was saying actually raises a lot of questions. So don't forget Slido. And if you need to take note of any questions that come to mind, have those ready to go. So at the end of the session, we will have time for Q&A, for questions and answers from online, also in the audience. And also don't forget that this microphone, it's mobile. So we can bring the microphone to you if you prefer to ask the question in the room. Just raise your hand and we'll do that. Well, let's get straight into our discussion. Let's jump straight in. New generation of MSPs for 2030 and beyond. Now, we did say that this is a hybrid conference, so we're using Slido, interaction, etc. Lots of people online. We're actually going to try today to have one of the participants, one of the panelists online as well. So fingers crossed for that. Ludovic will turn up from the Netherlands. But let's welcome Tina Tillman, Ministerial Advisor, Department of the Built Environment, Ministry of the Environment, Finland. Tina, if you can come and join us on the panel. Thank you very much. And we'll just see whether Ludovic is going to join us in just a moment. Hello, Ludovic. Let's just do it. Great. And a great picture of the ocean behind you, or the sea. Can you hear us, and can you, and if you can just say a few words.
Good morning from Scheveningen.
Great.
Is this working?
It is. Big round of applause for Ludovic and for the technology and for the hybrid performance. Wonderful. And great background as well, Ludovic, so that's great. So we'll just go back to the other screen just so we can see all of the participants, but we'll obviously put Ludovic up when we're having the discussion. We're also wanting to welcome to the stage Milena Ripkin, researcher, lecturer, and project manager at COAST, so Center for the Environment and Sustainability. Research at the University of Oldenburg in Germany. Milena, welcome. Isn't that fantastic? We can see our participants and we can see Ludovic. Let's also welcome Catarina, and this is the pronunciation, this is a terrible pronunciation part, Frazão Santos, researcher and lecturer, University of Lisbon, Portugal, and I know that I mispronounced that. Catarina can give us a lesson in Portuguese. But welcome to all of you. It's great to see also Ludovic Aspoil, Senior Policy Officer, Netherlands Ministry for Infrastructure and Water Management. So a great team to have with us today. A lot of variety, a diverse panel. Let's jump straight into the conversation, and it's great that we can see Ludovic there as well. We can see him on the screen for the other panelists. And in fact, I think we wanted to begin perhaps with Ludovic. In fact, let's begin with Ludovic for our very first question. Obviously, we're looking towards the future, and we're wanting to know, Ludovic, first of all, what really is the greatest challenge or the priority for you, from your perspective, to be addressed for this new generation, for the next steps of MSP. If you can kick things off for us with that wonderful background there of the ocean, Ludovic.
Yeah, thank you, Seamus. No, well, this is actually not the picture behind me what's going to be happening in the future. This must be the past, when we didn't see offshore wind turbines on the horizon. But we need those. We need to use the sea in order to save the sea, and I think that's the task ahead of us. No matter what happens in the coming years, we need to step up efforts to save the ocean, the seas, in order to have a biodiverse planet. So I'm very happy that politically this is now stated by I think all of the EU member states and beyond, that we need to move to a net zero energy supply. So net zero carbon fuels, and we want to do that with a net gain for the environment. So the net zero also means that we should avoid noise underwater, other types of emissions, and the net gain for the environment means that we should protect, strengthen, and restore. So that all together forms a challenge to get also the evidence. Get the evidence in place to underpin our maritime spatial plans. That will require a huge amount of work, and we do not have all the evidence yet of what's going on at the moment. We see underwater turbulence of offshore wind turbines, we see wake effects, we see things happening in the atmosphere. So, so we need to step up innovation in all types, and we have to work very hard. That's, I think, the biggest challenge, with many more people.
A lot of hard work, and a good word there, innovation as well. That's a big word for me at the moment, innovation. Let's put the same question. Thanks for those opening remarks, Ludovic. Great food for thought as well from you. Let's go to Tina. So the same question, really your priorities when we're looking at the next steps. Where are we headed? And what's the top of your list when it comes to, we can say it's a challenge, a priority, the focus area?
Yes, thank you so much. I believe that we have a lot, as Ludovic said, we have a lot to do in the future, and putting efforts to add energy is huge. The task is huge, and also climate change is changing sea area a lot, and we need the energy for renewable energy to act more greener, and I believe that we also have to pay attention a lot to nature. That's the other huge task, because underwater biodiversity is we are losing it if we don't know where the valuable things are. And also by protecting nature, we add resilience towards climate change. So we have huge tasks if these 30 by 30 nature protection areas will be realized, and if we manage to get as much renewable energy as we want. So combining these two with in MSPs will be a huge task, and we really need new technologies and new innovations, as Ludovic said. So.
Okay, perhaps we can say that Mother Nature is the biggest stakeholder when it comes to MSP. Great thoughts, and also Tina, what Ludovic was saying there, a lot of work to be done with a lot of people. So that's important. That's important for you as well, to have a lot of people on board helping in this process.
Yes, we need everyone. So it's important to, I believe that we will work more and more with people living on the coast or using the sea. Now we have worked a lot with sectoral authorities, politicians, and maybe not so much with citizens. So we need all on board.
All on board, with lots of captains maybe at the helm as well. So a massive ship. Katarina, let's come to you for that same question. So your priorities, your focus areas, what's your vision for the future when it comes to MSP?
I will repeat a bit of what was said, but I do think that one of the key challenges is climate change. How it is going to affect marine spatial planning. We are seeing changes in marine ecosystems, but also on the social landscape. And these changes will affect ocean users with new conflicts among users, new environmental pressures, also legal issues, because we have all the permitting and the political landscape. And marine spatial planning deals with all of this, so it will be affected. So we have to find a way to build climate smart or climate informed, climate resilient marine spatial plans. And also going to the nature topic and dimension, we need to do it in a way that it is sustainable. So maybe the climate change challenge is an opportunity to revise the way that we see conservation and the protection of the ecosystems and the services they provide. So maybe this is an opportunity to rethink the way that we really consider that in marine spatial planning, because as we talked yesterday, we have those plans that are more based on the conservation and the protection of biodiversity, but we also have those that are more focused on blue growth. Now it is changing. They are getting more focused on the development of a sustainable blue economy. But so I think that climate change also brings this opportunity to rethink the way we perceive conservation, because if we keep separating the two dimensions, we will not get anywhere. So climate change exacerbates that as well. So it's more of an overarching challenge that we need to address.
And obviously you have in mind the EU Green Deal, the likes of the Paris Agreement. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine keywords for you, it's adaptation, but also one of the words we saw in the word cloud this morning, mitigation. So mitigation measures when it comes to this. That's part of your focus as well?
Yes, I think that marine spatial planning can contribute to both. So, of course, that the first thing that comes to mind when we think about mitigation is offshore renewables, and we will hear more about it. We already heard of it. And of course, that MSP can contribute to the expansion of offshore renewables by creating space, by clarifying the benefits of having them, by decreasing conflicts with other uses. But there's other ways as well. For example, marine spatial planning can ensure that we have areas to protect blue carbon ecosystems, like seagrass meadows or mangroves or coral reefs, depending on the region where we are. So we can protect that, or we can ensure areas for the restoration, that way contributing to carbon absorption. But MSP can also promote areas for the development of, or prioritize areas for activities that tend to use alternative fuels or alternative sources of energy, like new propellers based on wind energy for shipping or fishing. So there's a lot of different pathways that we can follow to support the mitigation through MSP, and adaptation as well. Climate refugia, protecting those areas that are naturally more resilient to climate changes, or even just protecting key ecosystems and habitats and species, or even supporting social resilience by and this goes back to yesterday's discussion on stakeholder involvement. So if we do have that pathway to involve people, and especially local communities, we are increasing their awareness on climate change impacts and integrating them into the solutions and the design of solutions. And this will go along with education and what Melina will also bring. So there are multiple pathways if we really want to do it, and if we think about the challenges of climate change and how to address it, MSP is a way to foster those actions and to implement them.
Okay, Katharina, thank you very much. Interesting, we've got two people here representing governments and two people representing the research community. We saw that yesterday with Andrea, so very interesting to have that perspective. Malena, also involved in research, very important, the expertise, the reflection, looking at what's going on. So your priority areas, I can imagine, really, you can echo what others are saying, but your priorities for the future.
Yes, I mean, of course, I very much agree what has been said so far, but I also want to bring in another aspect which has been mentioned by a couple of you already, which is the education part, which I think should be one of the priorities, especially in the future, that MSP education is very important, especially now, we heard yesterday as well, like the marine space is becoming more complex, we need experts on this topic. It's also of high interest for students, so it's not just that we as lecturers, like I'm teaching at university, I'm teaching MSP or MSP-related lectures as well. And also the students, they really demand it. They are very, very interested in this topic. And I'm not arguing necessarily for like full study programs on MSP, but rather of having MSP as part of study programs. So for example, I'm teaching students with backgrounds in geography, environmental science, biology, engineering, all on master level, but most of them are really not aware of MSP or what happens at the marine space, which is super surprising. So what I'm usually doing when I start my very first MSP lecture each semester, I just show a picture of the empty sea. And I'm asked like, hey, this is when you are at the beach, this is usually what you see. It looks very empty, but to be honest, it's not. And that's how we start developing that the marine space is very busy, it's very complex, and these students, they just don't know about it, which is super surprising. But as soon as they start learning about the marine space, they become super interested in the topic. So for example, also, as I said, they have very different backgrounds, but suddenly they become so interested in the topic that they want to write their master thesis on it, for example. So I really argue for having more MSP as an important topic, maybe not just in higher education, university, but also general MSP ocean literacy is important.
And I can imagine you spot great ideas. I mean, with all of that research and all of that writing going on, do you spot great ideas for the future that can be taken on board? I mean, that can be shared? I can imagine that's a great place to identify possible solutions for the future.
Of course, I mean, the students, they come up with great ideas. We just talked about master theses, for example. So they come up with new ideas, they come up with new topics like multi-use, which is very important, cumulative impacts, which we talked about yesterday as well. New innovative approaches. In my teaching, I try to do it as innovative and hands-on as possible. So they come up with like ideas how to use new technology, and of course that's something that can also be implemented in planning in the future. So having these young professionals basically also involved, because they are the ones who will be maybe planners, maybe not. Of course, not all of these students will become planners, or maybe even none, but still, even if they end up in different sectors or something somehow related to the sea, at least they have some kind of background knowledge, they know kind of what happens at sea. So if they work, I don't know, in the shipping industry or in the wind energy industry, or just some rural planners, I don't know, but there's so much land-sea interaction, there are so many things going on at sea, and if they just know a little bit what's happening out there, that's already a success, I would say.
As I was really trying to work out how we can tap into that expertise we're getting from the new generation, yesterday we saw some students actually in the room here who are involved in marine research, very involved in the topic, very interested. They were here yesterday asking questions, so that's great to see. I wonder just, the rest of the panel on that question of education, maybe we can go to Ludovic in the Netherlands, just from that, somebody from a ministry. So that whole question of education, it comes back to what we talked about yesterday as well, Ludovic, which is engagement, public engagement, getting people, to be talking about this, creating a buzz around MSP. Important for you in the Netherlands as well?
I think so. Though we don't even use the terminology of marine or maritime spatial planning that much. We have a program, a water program, which also has in it the program for the sea. And I think we are going to see much more on that side, not the zoning as a central key point for planners, but the whole political, societal dimension of decision-making of what we need to do. As things become more pressing, and we do not have the evidence, it will be a political, societal choice. So on all aspects, it's important just to put the sea as a central topic, I think, much more than marine planning. Though it's good to for everybody involved to understand that it's a planning process, politically guided, stakeholder-driven. The one challenge we did not mention, but it's a firm political commitment, is from the Green Deal and from the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's to leave nobody behind. So if space is lacking and we need more space to restore the sea, where are our fishermen going? What can we provide as a future for them? To take them with us through the transition. Now, in terms of does the one who develops a wooden offshore wind turbine, is that part of maritime spatial planning? I would say yes. I think a lot of things are part of maritime planning, the work we do. So I think in the community, we should also decide, do we focus on maritime spatial plan and we have to deliver a document which zones the sea, or do we see it as a continuous program to save life on Earth?
Okay, interesting points. Does anybody want to respond to what Ludovic has been talking about? Tina?
Well, yes, I could add that maritime area is an area. So and in MSP we are doing spatial planning. So it's in a way familiar for spatial planners. But I agree that, as Malena said, people don't know what's beneath the surface. And if you don't know, you can't see the values, and it would be important to add education of the special features of the maritime area, but in principle, I think the process is about the same on land and on sea. So, yeah, and. Yes, in Finland we have one course of maritime spatial planning, international course.
Just one.
Just one. We are a small country, so, yes, but we have something, but we would need more.
So work in progress, that's a phrase that I love at the moment. Tina, I don't know whether we wanted to get some comment on the whole issue of education. Katarina, just something, if you wanted to add something on that, because obviously from your point of view as well, you know, working in research.
Yeah, so I also teach at the university. One of the courses is on marine spatial planning, and it's the targets are marine biologists, so they are getting a bit out of their comfort zone, but it's very interesting because by the end of an entire semester, they really get a glimpse of what marine spatial planning is and what's the importance of doing it. Maybe going back a bit to also some discussions from yesterday, marine spatial planning, and as Ludwig was saying, the focus is more on the ocean than on the process itself, and marine spatial planning is not an answer to everything. It has its own limitations, but it's also a very good platform to take some messages and thinking forward, and it's undeniably a great instrument, and an instrument that is being developed all over the world and expanding still. So we need to really understand how to overcome the challenges and doing it right. And also about communicating the topic to not only to students, but to the overall society. I sometimes get the challenge that sometimes we do communication outside the academia. And whenever I start saying marine spatial planning, I already lost them, especially in Portuguese, because it's ordenamento do espaço marítimo. People,
the translation, lost in translation?
Yeah, people are lost. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about, it's too complicated words. And it's challenging to translate it into simple terms, like we are talking about the use of the ocean, about fisheries, about aquaculture, tourism, protection, which areas should be allocated to each activity, trying to protect the environment, trying to develop a sustainable blue economy. So really, overcoming these communication challenges it's very important, and using sometimes alternative ways like cartoons. There's a visual artist, Bas Kohler, I love his work, and ISIS has been using a lot of his work to translate marine science to the broader community. So overcoming those challenges and working on them is very important as well.
And making everything accessible to a wider public, and bringing people on board by simplifying the message. I know I talked to a friend yesterday. I said I'm doing a conference on marine spatial planning. They just heard the word space, so satellites and mapping the seabed. That was the idea that I got. So I had to explain a little bit. But really good points on all of that, you know, about education, and we can come back to that, you know, as the discussion goes on. I just also wanted to just talk to Tina about this concept of looking at scenarios for the future, so making no assumptions. And perhaps it's also what we said yesterday about making sure there are no surprises, so that we're really thinking about what could be the likely scenarios for the future. That's important for you, I think, Tina, as well, that drafting of scenarios when it comes to maritime planning for the future, and using MSP, obviously.
Yes, we used scenarios in Finnish MSPs, but we can't predict the future, as we have now seen, and there will be surprises, black swans, like just recently, and the fineness of using scenarios is that we are planning for the future. So we should know something about the future, and we have to estimate it somehow. So we did 3 scenarios with consultants, scenario consultants, and very different ones. And then with these scenarios, we started to discuss with participants, stakeholders. Anyone can take part in the MSP process in Finland, so there were very different kind of people. And we started right in the beginning discussions how they see the future, and if these, the question was that if these scenarios will come true, how would they react to that future? And we used also maps, and they had to tell us where they would like to see the activities in the future in that scenario. In the beginning, people were maybe a bit against that. No, this is not possible. There will be no restrictions in the Baltic Sea. The relationship with Russia will develop positively, and so this is not going to happen. But then we were quite strict that what if still something like this happens, and then they had to adapt to our demands, and the idea of discussing about the future with stakeholders is that they start to cooperate and discuss with each other, but they can't have their own agenda all the time on board. So they have to listen others and discuss, and then little by little they start to understand each other, and so they can find spatial solutions together.
Okay, I wonder if that's unique, actually, the building of scenarios for the future. I can imagine other countries, other agencies are also involved in that. I don't know if that's a topic for you, looking into the future, building up possible scenarios. I mean, is that important? It's not an exact science for somebody at a university, but important nonetheless to go down that road. Milena?
Yes, actually, I have a lecture running at the moment called Water and Climate, and I asked the students to come up with very innovative outputs and ideas. And they are all developing scenarios for the future on multi-use at sea for the topic. So they come up with ideas, and they also do innovative outputs. So they're not going to write any lengthy reports, which I'm going to have to read and grade and everything, but they are producing podcasts or videos. So have some short, precise outputs. They have to write a little report at the end as well, but a very short one. But it's really about having innovative outputs, really on scenarios, on thinking like critically about MSP as well, but also applying the theoretical knowledge they gained during the lectures. So thinking into the future is definitely something of importance for MSP education, or the students who receive the education basically as well.
Okay, great. Katarina?
Scenarios are key. Building scenarios is key under the climate change challenge. And if we are trying to develop climate-informed marine spatial plans, although they have limitations, as Tina was pointing, and there's a lot of uncertainty and things that we cannot predict, but there's also a lot of things, or a range of futures that we can try to not plan for, but prepare for. And scenario building and modeling tools have been used and are being explored under development of ocean plans. For example, in the US, they used species distribution modeling, current and future, to try to understand how the current ocean plans would be effective or not according to those changes in key species, like species that are used for fisheries. And so that type of information, species distribution modeling, climate modeling to see if the ocean conditions will change more or less on this region, are key to inform climate smart ocean plans. But not only the areas where change is envisioned, but also areas where those changes will have the greatest consequences. So using vulnerability analysis and risk analysis, social vulnerability, environmental vulnerability, those are also very important to support climate-informed MSP and to support the development of scenario planning or visions for the future. And it's, although it is uncertain to a certain extent, it is still very important to look forward to prepare to whatever is coming. But as it was said, we are planning for the future based on information from the past, so it's a big challenge, but still it's something that it's more and more developing, and it's a way forward for sure.
Yeah, and then it's a question of how far ahead do we plan? You know, the scenario is how far ahead. I mean, we're talking 2030 and beyond, but how far ahead can we have these scenarios? Great points. Ludovic, I wanted to ask, go to you on renewables, but just your thoughts just quickly on the subject there about scenarios, drafting scenarios, the benefits of that in the Netherlands. Is that something you work on?
Sure, but I don't think we use scenarios anymore to get a picture or a better understanding of the future we want. So that's pretty clear. So we want to keep within a safe limit of climate change because it's existential, and we know that we have to save biodiversity and give it a push. So the scenario development we are doing is much more practical, I think, also targeted to MSP. If we talk on energy, we know for the Netherlands how much renewables we need to be self-sustaining in the future. That might still change. There is an upper limit and a lower limit on the energy consumption for industry and society. But roughly, we know what the target is. For the Netherlands, it would be roughly 70 gigawatt of offshore renewables. So based on that scenario planning, can look at space. And there's a lot of things which we have to take into account. It's also the energy system on land, which we're going to talk about, the stability of the net. So our transmission operators, they are working on it. Right now, they have to plan for the next 20 years and make the investments. So we also have to give them a bit of certainty that the offshore renewables can be built. I think hydrogen, green hydrogen, so made out of renewables, is an interesting one, particularly offshore. And there I'm very interested whether we can have a bit of a win-win. Although we need to desalinate the water to make the hydrogen, there will also be residues in that process of contaminants which are still in the sea. So if we can use that technique of green hydrogen production offshore, and we do it in a sustainable way, and we can clean the sea with it a little bit at the same time, that'd be very interesting to see. And those type of things are hard to perhaps build into broader scenarios. But what I said in the beginning, we know where we're going heading to, the completely sustainable blue economy and a biodiversity. So that's the boundary in which we can develop the next steps.
And Ludovic, when we look at the implementation of the European Union commitments when it comes to offshore renewables, what for you, I mean, we talk often about a mindset or a culture or a frame of mind when we approach this. What's top of the priority list for you when it comes to how we approach it? How can we make sure that we're implementing this in the right way? What's in mind for you?
I'm very happy with the fact that more and more member states, including the Netherlands, openly and politically say this is what we need. That makes our life a bit easier as planners. And from that, we also get a better understanding that we need to do it on the sea basin level. For our area, this is from France to Norway, from Denmark to Scotland, Sweden to England. This is one system. We already put that on the table in 2015, but now it's so pressing and emerging that no matter what are the relations on different political topics, this is something we're going to do together. So I think that's the biggest change for maritime spatial planning, that it will become a more transboundary joint effort.
We're all in this together. And also, you said before, leave no one behind, which is a great slogan. I've heard that before in the past, but it's a good one, isn't it? It's an old one, but a good one. Ludovic, thanks very much. We're going to come to Slido in just a moment, so don't hesitate with your questions. There's lots to unpack here on this topic, isn't it? I mean, we're looking to the future, and as I say, are we looking forward 10 years, 20 years, 30, 50? Just offshore renewables, just before we come to Slido, I don't know if anybody had any last-minute thoughts on offshore renewables on this topic, just to respond to what Ludovic was saying. Otherwise, we'll go straight to Slido, because I know there's probably a lot of questions we can see there. 14 likes. I love this popularity contest. Can MSP keep up with marine energy targets that are being driven by the energy crisis? I think that sneaked in from yesterday as well. I saw that question there yesterday. And that actually could come up in the session 5 we're having later on today. But I don't know if somebody wanted to talk about that just as a little appetizer ahead of session 5, or should we leave that for session 5? No one's leaning forward to grab the microphone. Just maybe a comment from Katarina. We did get 14 likes on this for this session, so democracy in action. Katarina.
Well, I will not say anything new, but as we mentioned throughout this panel, MSP will plays a role in supporting marine renewables and supporting the expansion of marine renewables. So it is a way to contribute to the marine energy targets that are being established. And I think with everything that has happened since the beginning of this year, those targets are even more important and will be even more highlighted and prioritized. So an MSP can for sure play a role in that.
Okay, and we had another question there, and it's just disappeared. I was going to talk there about, and I've just lost now the word that we saw there. But we see 8 votes there also. And this is for you, Katarina, so it's great you're holding the microphone. We can read this together. You co-authored an article titled, hope we're not putting you on the spot here, titled Major Challenges in Developing Marine Spatial Planning. One of those challenges was ensuring proper monitoring and evaluation. That's a word we talked about yesterday as well, the importance of monitoring. Should new plans have a fully inbuilt set of indicators allowing for proper monitoring and evaluation system? Hopefully we're not putting you on the spot. Was it accurate, the quote there also from the article? Great.
I am on the spot. For sure. Thank you for the question, Juan. Yes, monitoring and evaluation is key. So this is not new, and this is not by me, but people who are very knowledgeable on MSP say that if we are not measuring where we are heading, we cannot tell success from failure. And this is what monitoring does. So we need monitoring to see if all the good objectives and good visions and good goals that we established are being met or not. And in fact, that's one of the big challenges and the things that many times do not work on marine spatial plans. Of course, that can be connected to a variety of reasons, from marine spatial plans being new in some cases and not having the time to properly develop so far indicators and monitoring, because of course we start with a set of indicators and then through time we see that maybe we should add this one or take that one out, and that's normal. In other cases it's because there's a very a lot of focus on developing the plan, and then not that much resources are focused on monitoring and revising the plan, which leads us to adaptive management and the really need for ensuring that we keep revising and learning from what we did and revising and improving the plan. So planning, it's many people think that when we do the plan and implement it, it's over, but no, it's just a start. So planning, it's a never-ending story in a good way if it's properly developed. So new plans really do need to ensure the evaluation mechanisms. I'm not sure if having a set of indicators for all plans is the way to go. It could be helpful in a way to then make comparisons among countries and to help the transboundary management, but probably each context will need its own specific indicators, but ensuring that new plans do have that evaluation mechanism is key, for sure.
And isn't it great to know people are reading out articles, all this research we're doing? That's great, Katarina. Well summarized. And also, that wasn't an anonymous question. That was somebody from the European Commission. Yes. So, you could be in touch. That's a great conversation to be having. The Green Deal. We talked about that, the Green Deal. I don't know if anybody else wanted to talk about this. Will the Green Deal change dramatically the MSP plans? Who would like to respond to that question? Ludovic, great. And 14 likes on that question. Ludovic.
Love the Green Deal, which is actually from 2019. I think this actually ties, my answer would be the same for the first question. Can we keep up? Because I think the answer is yes, or we will be. We'll have to. So what we know, there are some key enablers. So the politicians are on the alert. They know what they want. They've agreed. That's part of the European Green Deal. So it's the political commitment. Number two, the stakeholders are ready on all sorts, whether it be NGOs, whether it be the offshore industries, whether those with a stake on land, the fishermen. I think everybody is ready for this task. Then a third enabler is the whole digitalization, which is also part of the European Green Deal. Digital twins, we touched upon it yesterday a little bit, but in my belief, that should help us make the true and evidence-based calculations of scenarios. So we can feed in everything we learn from research and monitoring to be adaptive on what's going on, and to be able to also keep within an agreement on how much this energy ambition should use the principle of overriding interest, which is a bit of you can explain that from a legal point of view. You can also argue environment is of major public interest. But here I think we talk about how much can you do offshore without knowing the consequences in advance. And there you have a political decision. So the Green Deal has in it that we will have some better legislation for MSP, and all the elements on which we build in the maritime spatial plans is already in EU law, and that will be strengthened. The nature restoration law, we will not have to transpose it. It will be directly effective. So these type of things all, I think, are enablers for our work.
Okay.
Point.
Okay. Ludovic, thank you very much. Isn't it great to have that connection there? It's just wonderful to have this hybrid connection. Don't forget to keep those questions coming. We have another 25 minutes, so this is a great topic. It's not every day that you have this kind of expertise in front of you. Those online also in the room, don't hesitate. We had a question there also, according to your view, what's the long-term for MSP? Well, this is what this topic is all about. So 10 years as in the directive. Somebody on the panel, Tina, this could be a question for you. The long term, and this links to, to what we're talking about with scenarios, etc. And also, the Green Deal, is that going to dramatically change things? It's all connected, isn't it, Tina?
To the Green Deal question, my answer is same as what Lodevik said, that yes, it will change. We have a lot to do to find areas for such an amount of wind energy production. And yes, 10 years. It's in the directive that these plans should be studied at least every 10th year. And I believe we don't have to do new plans, totally new plans. We can check if the plan works or if it's too old to steer development. And long term, 10 years is. I wouldn't say 10 years is very long term. So we were thinking to 2050 when we did our scenarios. And about the scenarios, I want still to say that we didn't choose any of them. It was we developed those just to create discussion. So we didn't want to bind us to any particular future. Instead, all futures.
Okay.
So, and yes, but a plan can, I think, might easily work for 10 years, and well, you will notice if the developers don't find any more places for their development, or if the plan does not work, so there's a need to renew it.
Yep, 10 years. Anyone in a relationship or in a marriage will know that if you talk about a 10-year plan, it doesn't last very long, does it? It's like, it's the big unknown. Tina, thanks very much. It's interesting because with our democratic system of ranking, I spot a question, then it disappears because the likes push something further up. Let's go to the top here. This is a question from BirdLife Europe, Anouk. I don't know if this is somebody in the room or online, but this is an interesting question. So BirdLife just did an assessment showing that MSPs will increase cumulative pressures on the marine environment. How MSP can meet the challenge of massive deployment of offshore renewables while ensuring that nature is protected and that cumulative impacts are properly addressed. So how can MSP meet those challenges? Tina, you wanted to respond to this one?
Yes, thank you. I would like to point out that without MSP, without the plan, there would be development, and we would not have a tool to guide it. So the plan is something where you can steer the development in more disciplinary way. And so it should be a tool to get better environment, to protect environment, and we should keep that in mind that without a plan there would maybe be more cumulative effects than pressures than with the plan. I agree that when you see the plan, you can see all the development, what is perhaps coming, and then you are thinking that so much activities, there might be a lot of impacts, but what would be the result without a plan?
So striking a balance. I don't know, Katarina, you wanted to respond to that?
Yes, I wanted to add that this brings us back to monitoring, because you need to be monitoring what happens to see what happens with the cumulative impacts, if they are really increasing, if they are decreasing, if the offshore wind development is getting more, is taking more than it's getting at. So this is all about trade-offs, and monitoring is the way to see, close monitoring, real monitoring is the way to see if we are doing more harm or we are actually ensuring that we can support a healthy ocean while taking the benefits that we need.
And it's also about ongoing monitoring, I can imagine. We talk about monitoring, and sometimes it's every 5 years we monitor something, but the concept of ongoing monitoring, real-time monitoring, yeah?
Thanks. No, I just want to add that, for example, we just applied for a new research project on MSP for the North Sea region. And I think also to questions like this, also new technologies and new ideas can play a big role. Like, for example, we propose, for example, to having or using things like augmented reality, virtual reality to display certain things on maps, for example. Maps are very much 2D at the moment, but that there are ways to just illustrate that these are multidimensional spaces, that we can really show what's in different layers, basically, of the sea in different dimensions, and that we can have different new technologies, like, for example, the MSP Challenge, which is a brilliant tool, not just in education, but also for stakeholder engagement or general literacy, but also in planning processes, and that new technologies that are developed further and further can also help to tackle those questions.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. Let's go to the next question, 12 votes. Which is on a different topic, and this comes from, I think it's, no, it's anonymous. Although ocean management is a national competence, the future of the ocean is also played out at the local level. We touched on this yesterday. How can the MSP approach have a strong echo locally, and how can local elected representatives be integrated into the whole process? I don't know who wanted to answer this question. We've talked a bit about this, but maybe there's a different perspective. Does education come into this question, perhaps, Milena?
Maybe, yes. My approach to teaching is not that I'm just in front of class and talk to everybody, like sharing my knowledge, but what I do is I invite experts. I invite guest lecturers who have knowledge on a certain topic, and these can also be locals, of course, who work, I don't know, maybe at a local harbor or for land planning somewhere. So I think that's definitely important to involve these people also on a bigger scale. But in education, I really try to involve experts on sectors who can be local, who can be international. That's definitely a big topic. So also an invitation, maybe if someone is here who really would like to give a lecture, or we organize summer schools, for example, twice a year on MSP education. So if you feel like you would like to teach or give a talk to students, you're always free to contact me, of course.
Yep, and look at the people here. We have a lot of people from Brest. The local input, the regional council. Very important to have local experts as well in all the regions taking part. Tina, you wanted to talk to this question as well.
Well, I could say something on Finnish case, where plans were done, actually drafted on local level, on regions, and these regional councils, they approved the plan. So this local level was very much involved, and our aim is to involve even more for the next round, and we believe that politicians play an important role, and this land-sea interaction is important to that sense, because everybody uses sea when they live on the coast. And what could be an option, and what we already have used, is this citizen science. We could, on that way, involving local people to the planning process. We could get more local knowledge and implement that in planning.
So like the citizen scientist we talked about yesterday, so getting even the ordinary people on board. Ludwig, also, this is something that you touched on earlier in your answer, wasn't it? This getting local elected representatives involved as well. Ludwig in the Netherlands.
I think, Siemens, there's of course the situation in every member state is different, or every country. what is the say of local governments or regional governments on the part of the sea or the coastal area. In the Netherlands, it's only the central government who decides outside of the first kilometer. But it doesn't mean that regional and local authorities do not represent stakes in marine spatial planning, in particular in the land-sea interaction. And we've been on a journey in the Netherlands to tease out what are, jointly with those multi-level colleagues of ours in the regions and in the cities, what's their stake and how that could be represented. So even further inland, when they put sea trout into in the lakes, I said, well, there is a connection. So how do they swim to the sea and how to come back? If we look at shipbuilding, it takes place everywhere in our country. So I think there's two levels. There's the international dimension on the sea basin level, on which we need to work in the North Sea. But they're part as well, because every scenario you would think of has a connection with the land. And yeah, there's an option, and I think it's needed, but it's also the awareness amongst local and regional authorities that there is a stake which they have and they have to represent is an important note.
Okay, another question, 13 votes from Ingala. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Another challenge when developing MSP is making them just and equal, making sure to take into consideration also gender, poverty, perspectives. I imagine just a few examples. How have you addressed this in your plans, or how can these issues be addressed in the plans? I don't know if you're actually involved in that, Katarina and Marina, but how can we imagine that? Maybe Tina, you could respond to this first of all. In Finland, you know, speaking on behalf of the ministry there, just and equal.
Yes, thank you. In our planning process, all participants were equal and all were heard, and we didn't prioritize any opinions, and we went through this process together with stakeholders almost to the end, and then planners start to draft or finalize actually the plan which stakeholders had drafted, and then we negotiated with some other ministries, important ministries, and some important research institutes to hear the final opinions and to make the plan. Well, they could stop the plan going further, so that we heard their opinion. So all participants were heard equally, and it was a nice process because all people felt that they are valuable.
And you know, taking into account these other issues like gender, poverty, perspectives, it's drawing up the parameters. What actually can we take into account? What things should we take into account if we're looking at things being just and equal? I don't know if Katarina or Malena or Ludovic wanted to talk to this. Katarina?
Yes. So about the Portuguese case, very briefly, I think that as in the example that Tina gave, everyone can take part on the process, and there's the public consultation phase, which has the problem of taking place in a very late stage, as it usually does. But everyone can participate. I don't know if there are specific considerations on gender and poverty perspectives, but this is key for the development of equitable ocean plans, for sure. And it's something that it's getting more and more attention for the past couple of years. And climate change will also exacerbate this, because there will be people that will benefit from changes and people that will lose from changes. And especially in regions where there is a high dependence on the ocean for livelihoods, this will be key to really understand those social changes that will rely on the natural ones, and to incorporate that on the plans and on the planning process. And it's a challenge. It's not... I would say there's not an easy answer, but at the same time, the key answer or overall one is to really engage people and involve people in the planning, involve stakeholders, local stakeholders especially, and from the beginning, not just at the end of the process.
And I can imagine this comes back to monitoring as well, bringing this into the monitoring is not just the internal mechanism of the process, but also the wider impact and who's being affected. Ludovic, I see you raised your hand on this question as well.
Yes, because apart from perhaps how you can look at it from a perspective somewhere on the globe where the one thing is more important than the other, we assess all our policies against the Sustainable Development Goals. And there you have, of course, poverty reduction, inequality, these type of things are part of that assessment. One of the things we've always looked for as a societal challenge is get the clean energy in an affordable way, which is the phrase also there. So we know also the negative effects of having the cheap offshore wind turbines placed very close to the shore, because that's where we find a lot of migrating birds. So there's a trade-off, unfortunately. And I think that it's there. That's why I always say politics is so much key in our maritime spatial planning processes. Because if there is a chance for, if it would be not balanced, there would be inequalities. If there would be disbalance in who is to gain and who stands to lose, it's not taken care of, then you either have a political debate or you'll be dragged to court. And I think that's what all maritime spatial planners are very much aware of, that the plan must stick in court.
Okay, and also avoiding surprises in the future. The next question, 12 likes. What new sectors await us beyond 2030? That's interesting. It's the crystal ball question. What are some of the sectors, the challenges that we haven't thought about? Some of the potential areas we should maybe start to think about?
I can give just a couple of thoughts. So I think that the past years showed us that there's so many things that we cannot predict. And so, and that just can't come up and challenges. So I don't really know what the new challenges will be, but climate change will keep being a challenge for sure. Even if we tackle it today with mitigation actions and adaptation actions, well, especially mitigation, we will not prevent it from happening. We can prevent some daunting consequences, but not the change itself. So it will be a challenge still. And depending on the way that we develop our ocean plans, and more than that, our use of the ocean, biodiversity. How will biodiversity be kept, and what will be the status, the health status of the ocean in a decade and beyond that? I think that's a major challenge, and that's one that we should really get right because we depend on it.
So lots of pressure on all of us on that. Marlene?
Yeah, I also think I very much agree with what you just said. It's always difficult to just think about new sectors that might come up, but also I think that sectors that are existing at the moment, they will change quite dramatically. Like just as an example, Ludovic talked about land-sea interaction, for example. So it also means if we are going to meet the offshore renewable energy targets, which also means that we will have an increase of shipping, for example, maintenance shipping to these offshore wind farms. So it's not just like if one sector changes or increases in size, for example, also another sector might follow. So we will have way more maintenance ships going to these offshore wind farms in the future, for example. So I think that also existing sectors will change quite dramatically in the coming years or decades even.
So actually transformations within sectors, so actually changing sectors, not just new ones, but actually changing ones.
Exactly, yes, both.
Both. Okay, and another question here. How can ecological restoration be integrated into MSP in order to contribute to tackle CC and biodiversity conservation? Examples there, active, passive restoration, prioritization of areas, etc. Who does that speak to? Does that resonate, that question? Yeah? Tina, perhaps? Does that speak to you?
Well, I believe that we need biologists to define these things, and then MSP can implement that in the plans.
So the definition's important here, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if anybody else wanted to speak to this. Katarina? Ludwig as well after.
Okay. Yes, Marine Spatial Planning can define areas for the protection of ecological restoration. And so either protect areas where there are key important species and habitats that need to be kept, or areas to restore them. So of course that specialists need to assess and define which areas are the best, but then in the plans that knowledge can be incorporated. Taking a peek at one of the other questions that were there, and that relates with adaptive management. Like, you identify the area, you have to have a mechanism to incorporate it into the plan. And different countries will have different systems to do that.
Okay, and it's true that a lot of these questions coming up, they can be asked as well in the session to follow, or the two sessions to follow, in fact, this afternoon. Ludovic, your point of view on this when it comes to ecological restoration?
Love it. We should do this. And in the Netherlands, we've started in our maritime spatial plan, the current one. We have written down the ambition to restore 100 square kilometers of biogenic reefs at oyster. And we are collecting the evidence jointly with stakeholders and scientists, where we can build back better and faster. In terms of the legislation underpinning it, it will be the nature restoration law we expect on the 22nd of June. So if we're going to protect 30% of our sea area, of which a third strict, we, in my view, should protect those areas which also have a high potential for restoration. So if we restore the areas which we were already going to predict strictly, then we have a win-win, and it's absolutely part of maritime spatial planning.
That's a nice appetizer for the session coming up afterwards. We talk about the targets, 30%. Great thoughts. Listen, we just have a couple of minutes left. I want to just do like a mini word cloud from our panel. Just after our discussion, just give me one or two words, your buzz phrase, when we're looking forward 2030 and beyond. What really are the two words? One or two words, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm looking at the faces just to see who's ready for the buzzword or the two words. Katarina's ready for her. The word that really sums up where we're headed, the mindset we need for the future. Katarina.
Dynamic management.
Dynamic management. I see people taking notes of that. Excellent. Malena.
Education and literacy is key.
Education and literacy. Yep. And so understanding the language, understanding what's going on, absolutely important. Tina.
A clean and wealthy sea.
Clean and?
Wealthy.
And wealthy.
Yes.
Yep, we can be clean and wealthy. Good concept. That's a good slogan. I like it. Just as Ludovic said. Love it. Ludovic, your buzzword or phrase. One word, two words, or a phrase?
It's the revised DIPSR for planners. So we want to have desired state. We have individuals taking action and joint action. It's the state of mind to get the results.
Okay, and I also like leave no one behind. Excellent. Thank you very much to the panel. It's been a great discussion. It's time to have a coffee just to give ourselves a bit of boost of energy as we continue this discussion. And actually, the next two sessions, so if we didn't have time to come to your questions, do ask them again, keep them in Slido, because I see a lot of them are very relevant for some of the other sessions as well, with different panelists as well, so it's great to get those different insights. So thank you very much. A big round of applause to our panel. Thank you very much. And we have coffee now until 11 o'clock, so see you here at 11. Thank you very much.